All right, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us today for the Motorola Solutions Safe Schools webinar. I'd like to introduce you today to our panel. First is Sharon Hong. Sharon is our Vice President of Safety Reimagined and Ecosystem Solutions at Motorola Solutions. She currently leads the Ecosystem Solutions and Strategic Partners organization and has more than 20 years of experience with Motorola Solutions. With us, she has held a variety of leadership positions in engineering, pre-sales business, operations, channel sales, sales operations, and service offer management. She holds a Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering from UCLA and a Master's in Engineering Management from USC. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Guy Grace. Guy has worked in the security field for over 35 years, and he's served for over 3 decades as the Director of Security and Emergency Planning for Littleton Public Schools, a suburb of Denver, Colorado, before retiring in August 2020. Guy was recognized as the 2020 Campus Safety Director of the Year for his work at Littleton Public Schools in Colorado. Guy is also the recipient of many other national and security industry awards. Guy is the Partner Alliance for Safer Schools Technology Advisor Leader and also the K-12 National Security Program Manager for ASSA ABLOY. And finally on our panel today, I'd like to introduce you to Kevin Wren, who's been in the school security and emergency management field for over 20 years as a security resource officer and director of security, risk, and emergency management. He's been able to obtain over $10 million in grant funding for the school districts that he works for. Additionally, Kevin is a former Campus Safety Magazine Director of the Year, Sterling Committee Director for Partner Alliance for Safer Schools, an advisor for Safe and Sound Schools, and an as-is subject matter expert. He holds a Master's of Arts in Emergency and Disaster Management and currently serves as the school safety advocate for A3 Communication. So thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to this conversation. Sharon's going to be leading the conversation about school safety with Kevin and Guy, and we'd like to invite you to submit any questions that you have in the chat window today, and we will answer them at the end of the session. Anything that we don't get to, we'll give you a personal reply after this. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Sharon.
Great, thank you, Carol. Hello, everyone. I just want to start by thanking all of you for taking the time to join us today. And Guy and Kevin, again, thank you for taking the time to be on this panel with us to talk about this very, very important topic of school safety. You know, school safety is something that's top of mind for everyone these days, whether you're in the school as a student, a teacher, a parent, an administrator, a community leader. Within Motorola Solutions, many of the employees within our schools or within our company have children in schools, and this is very much top of mind for them as well. And so this is just a great opportunity for us to talk about school safety in general. Now, Guy and Kevin, we had a chance to connect before this panel, and from the introduction, it's evident that you both have extensive experience as it relates to school safety, both as practitioners and as security leaders. So why don't we start off with talking a little bit about what was important to you when you had the responsibility of making these decisions around school safety?
Oh, wow. That's a big question, right? First, thank you guys, and thanks a ton to Motorola Solutions for being such a great ally to the Partner Alliance of Safer Schools. Very welcomed and needed, and appreciate that. So for me, it was buy-in. I had to have stakeholder buy-in, identify my stakeholders, and know that at the end of the day, every penny we're spending on K-12 safety and security is to protect students. And oftentimes student buy-in is overlooked, and they hold the keys of the city, so to speak. So getting student buy-in, getting the teacher and administration buy-in on a safety security program. I and I believe Guy as well, you know, we had to start our programs from scratch. And you know, how do you convince a teacher that they have to have their doors shut and locked, and why they need to take a radio to the playground, and all those things. So I think buy-in was probably the biggest thing for me coming into the K-12 world at the 2 different districts that I was able to work with.
Well, I would agree wholeheartedly with what Kevin said, and again, it's an honor here to be here today with Motorola Solutions. and looking at that. Basically, it's about the buy-in, but also looking at the climate and the culture and what is going on in your schools, and looking at, how are we going to address everything in an all hazards type of manner. And that's kind of the solutions. You can't just like knee slap and just look at it like we're only going to address an active threat situation. You have to look at it as an active on all hazards types of solutions. And we're looking at that. The fundamentals of that being is the abilities for the teachers to teach and for the students to learn on any given day is the most important aspect that has to be considered. So when you're looking at those technology implementations, you can't just say, I'm going to throw something out there and to see if it's going to stick to the wall. No, it's got to be holistic, and it's going to have to work for every type of application, and it's going to enhance their learning environment. It's going to have to enable that ability for the teachers to teach and the students to learn on any given day. But I'd also say anything that we do has to be empowering, whether that be through, empowering on day to day, but empowering in the background. That safety and security is what enables that culture and climate in the school district, but also too that ability of academic performance, what we're measured by. So we cannot conflict with them.
Yeah, and Guy, I'll expand just a second there on what you said. Getting the buy-in and the all hazards approach. You with 30 plus years, me 20. Fortunately, unfortunately, we did not have standards to follow. And how do you get somebody to buy in? Oh, well, Guy said to do it, or Kevin said to do it. Yeah. Kind of a deal. So I think the new people into the field have it somewhat easy. They've got some standards and some processes that they can follow. But yeah.
Well,
when you look at it, partnerships is important. And I'm sorry about that. The partnerships that vendors like Motorola Solutions and others, other manufacturers and integrators, those were very important for me and Kevin through our career. When you say, Kevin, that, we learn from each other, and that's what we kind of laid out a road for the others behind, that are following us to go forward. And that's very important as well.
Yeah, Guy and Kevin, just to your point around, getting buy-in and understanding very first, what outcomes are you trying to drive to? What's important, not just around the active shooter event, but also day to day that we're trying to protect against, to keep students safe, to keep teachers safe, but also just to create an enriching environment where students can learn and thrive. Behind that, so it's so clear to have that overarching outcome and goal. And then behind that, though, that's where PASS comes in, right? Is around, okay, but to achieve those goals, there is an intersection of people, which we just talked about, right? Like, it's just what's the experience and what are the goals that we want to drive? There's processes, and then there's technology as well. And I think PASS, certainly these three, the intersection of these three is a big focus of PASS. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about the Partner Alliance for Safe Schools, PASS, and then also what are your foundational principles as an organization?
Well, I would say that what we do at the Partner Alliance for Safer Schools, we're a 501(c). That means we're a nonprofit, and we remain agnostic in our recommendations that we put out towards the K through 12 stakeholders. And when we're doing that, we're looking at a layered approach, a district-wide property and perimeter, parking lot perimeter, building perimeter, and classroom interior perimeter. And then what we're also working with as our partners is putting in and we'll talk about that in a future slide here, is policies and procedures, people, roles, and training, architectural, communication, access control, video surveillance, and detection alarms. And what that is those guidelines are very helpful, and you can find them at www.passk12.org as the place to download those recommendations and guidelines. You could also look at our website, and we have white papers and other technical papers. And let's let Kevin go ahead and expand more on what I said on the basic overview there.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're all a bunch of multi-hazards stakeholders that are all volunteers. I know, fortunately, unfortunately, right, we've got all of us on this call are all in the private industry, but we have other nonprofits that are involved, other trade organizations that are involved. We have current acting security directors at some major K-12s that are involved as well with the guidelines. And I think one of the biggest things that we've been able to get, Guy, is recognition by schoolsafety.gov as a national best practice. We alluded to it earlier, right? If 20 years ago, if I'd have known Guy, I could have called up Guy and said, hey, do you have anything on fencing recommendations? And if Guy had it, he'd have sent it to me for free, 100%, right? I got a friend of mine that says, if you stole it from me, you stole it twice. Well, so basically, we've left all of our egos, everything at the door, and everybody's coming in for the common good to write standards in a world that doesn't have them. At the end of the day, PASS answers a very simple question. If you have $1 to spend on school security, where should you spend it first? Through to you have so much money you don't know what to do with yourself. And I've yet to meet a school district, by the way, that doesn't know what to do with themselves. But it tries to bring in some of that common sense, because if you give a school administrator $1, they always go to a camera. And we're following the PASS guidelines. That's the second to last thing that you should be spending money on. So again, it's trying to set some standards like fire has when in a security world, to make sure that we're making smart decisions around security equipment purchases.
Yeah, and Kevin, to your point too, I think these guidelines that PASS publishes every year is just, it really has become the standard for, best practices as it relates to people, processes, and technology. Why don't we dive, Carol, into the next slide here, just to talk a little bit around the structure of it. Because certainly this is one of the reasons also that Motorola Solutions chose to be a member as well of PASS, right, is because of this layered, very organized approach to how one should be thinking about the investments that need to be made around school security. So Kevin, do you want to maybe talk a little bit about the different tiers and layers that we have within the guidelines in PASS?
Yeah, absolutely. So this slide kind of showing what I'm talking about. You have $1 to spend it here first. So the PASS guidelines is not around buying stuff. It's just spending money wisely, right? If I said to a security director at a K-12 20 years ago versus today, how did you create your security management plan? What best policies and procedures did you follow? And they're going to come back with something. Oh, I followed CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design. I followed defense in depth, but there was no specific, organization or publication that they were following, so to speak. So we would first say, well, what national best practice did you use or follow for this, right? And when there's not one, then let's identify what policy, procedure, best practice there is, whether that's writing your physical security management plan, or that's doing family unification processes, right? So that's kind of under policies and procedures. People, roles, and training. This one's huge. My school districts, I had anywhere between 2,000 and 18,000 employees, right? How am I training all those as one individual? You're not. So you have to use some technology to make sure that you're training everyone, and not just your current teachers, but also your substitute teachers, your day porters, your custodians, your bus drivers. How do you know they're all trained to the same standard when you have a much larger district, kind of a thing? So you got $1 to spend. We've got to look at those two areas first before we can even start looking at architectural designs and all the other things past that. So architectural, some of that is already done for us, right? A lot of this is new construction where we have some architectural guidelines. But after we do that, we're looking at communications. I cannot respond to an emergency if I don't know about it, right? I can't respond to an emergency if I can't even recognize that is an emergency, which is why I need people trained first, right? But we often come across the kindergarten teacher who has one way to call the front office, and that's a panic button or intercom or mass communications button on the wall. And as of late, it's a 50-50 shot if it works or not, because those systems need to be updated. Then we're looking at access control, and Guy's going to get into the perimeter layers here in a second, so I don't want to steal his thunder on the access control part, but just making sure that people can't just walk right into your building and have a conversation with a 6-year-old without having some kind of a vetting process, right? Then video surveillance, alarms and detection is at the end there. So that's kind of the order. And again, if I give an administrator $1, they're going to go straight to video surveillance or security cameras. and skip some of these other processes. So we're trying to educate people that, hey, stop, pause, let's think for a second before we just start throwing money at security cameras.
Guy, as you look at this slide or even the next slide, I think, Carol, can we bring up the next one? You know, just piggybacking off of what Kevin just talked about. Guy, from your perspective, what do you think about as it relates to all these different layers, in this case, for example, communication, right? Or even in the previous slide where we saw the video, access control, communications aspect of it. What comes to mind for you as you think about this continuum?
Well, I can say that when we've had these technologies and these human rules and processes, they have saved lives. And properly implementing them on a day-by-day basis is going to counter many of the types of threats that you are going to deal with in a school. When you look at a school every day, you've seen one school, for example. You've seen one school. Most schools are not similar to each other. Maybe they're similar in people, roles, and processes, but architectural layout and other components and those things are going to be different from school to school. And when we look at the average age of a facility in the United States, for example, it's 43 years of age right now, according to the Department of Education in a publication that just came out a month ago. So all I could say is, and what I would say, it's important to put in your layers of protection. You need to consider your district-wide, your property perimeter, your parking lot perimeter, your building perimeter, and your classroom interior perimeter. And those are so important. And when you're implementing them is to make sure that it's kind of like playing chess. You know, I hate to use that as an analogy, but when you have an emergency, you may find that technology may overcome, if it fails, the other processes that may fail in an emergency. I can say, like, for example, you know, I'm being agnostic here, trying to be, but I can say that I've seen radio communications, for example, save people's lives. But that was in the worst type of situations that you can deal with. But day-to-day business, having that communication is going to help you to facilitate between your district-wide and all those other layers of security here that you're implementing within your district. So it's important to have them corresponding and working together, you know, working together all the times through these layers. Any of these technologies and the human roles and processes that we implement, they need to work together. And that's why the Partner Alliance for Safer Schools, when we put out these recommendations and guidelines, is to help people to digest and implement through these layers of protection, the different types of components that we'll be talking about a little bit later in K through 12. It's important. So you need to consider your layers of protection and you need to implement them well. So what we would say when you're doing layers of protection, the most critical function is to look at your risk assessment of your facilities and your district. And a risk assessment in this day and age is not just the old-fashioned security consultant looking at your doors and hardware. It's a multi-team of professionals that comes in and looking at your security. You're looking at your threat assessment processes. You're looking at your communication processes. You're looking at your access, your doors and hardware, your video management systems. So it's just like it takes a team in the schools, it now takes a team of multi-professionals to come in and help a school district in implementing these security technologies through the layers of protection and these life safety components.
Yeah, and I have to say too that the guide that PASS puts out every year is just so comprehensive. I mean, right now what we're seeing on these couple of snapshots is just, you know, the tip of the iceberg. But if you actually download the guidelines, I mean, this is, how many pages is it? I think it's something like over 100 pages, isn't it?
This year we condensed it to 88 pages. It used to be 100 and over 150, but again, it's like you could put out a big giant pamphlet. What you want to do is consolidate that information, which we have, and then put supporting information in there so not to confuse the, you know, our K through 12 stakeholders. Not saying we're as a, you know, retired K through 12 stakeholder, I'm not saying we're ignorant, but, you know, we are focused. You know, we'll often go for, you know, a holistic information as much wherever we can find it, and that's what our attempt was.
And, you know, what I love about it too is the tiered approach that you take as well, because, you know, when we think about different schools and different school districts, depending on the size and the sophistication or even the complexity of your operations, I think every school, its district needs something a little bit different that's catered to them. And I think the PASS guidelines really touches all that breadth, from, hey, if you're just looking for one solution, maybe what you need is access control or just a new video system or new radios, to if you're very sophisticated and you have all of those things, how do you think about bringing more of these components together? And I think it's great that the PASS guidelines, scales to all the different types. Where I sit within the company, I head up the overall ecosystem of products. So when you look at the Motorola Solutions portfolio, a lot of the products that we have fall in line, Guy and Kevin, with the PASS guidelines. And I think a lot of users and school administrators, the thing that I hear a lot is, well, where do I start? And I think the beauty about what you guys are putting out there is you can start as small as you want or go as big as you want. One of the areas that we're starting to expand into also is, how do we bring all these different components together, between video, radio, and software. So if you do have multiple components within the ecosystem, how do you actually get to automate some of the interactions between video and radio? So I know, Guy and Kevin, this may fall into, you have a category called, I think, emerging or expansion technologies. Emerging technologies. It was one of those E words. But giving, our end users and customers the ability to create rules, right? Easy click and drag workflows that basically say, hey, if a door is propped open, then automatically notify an SRO on their radio, right? To take some of the thinking and the human decisions out of an event happening, and being able to automate some of that. Or if a panic alert is pressed by a teacher, automatically lock these doors on campus. And really trying to now, take it to that next level and being able to provide, automation where it matters, so that in the event of something that's more critical, humans can actually have the time to make decisions where it matters, as opposed to, well, who do I need to communicate this to, right? That's already taken care of. I know, Guy and Kevin, if that, you have any thoughts around that or around where we're going with that?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I'd like to acknowledge that I believe I heard you say that Partner Alliance of Safer Schools is the key to Motorola's success. So I'm happy to hear that, that you guys are following the guidelines to a T. But seriously, yeah, the emerging technologies is a couple of different things, but one of which is, it's more just that it's emerging, meaning we're not quite sure yet, right? Has it been proven out long enough? Are there standards in the industry around that certain technology coming into the marketplace? But what you had mentioned, though, is, kind of this whole group coming together, right? So that the door is opened and now I have a video, and that is not, I don't consider that emerging technology. I see that as a higher tier. It's not a basic level, right? We have to make sure that all your exterior doors shut and lock, right? And then we start looking at electronic access control and tying video to that door and all the things. But if you look at like what Tennessee has done with their legislation, right, where schools can actually lose their state funding, a percentage of their state funding, if highway patrol finds an open or a prop door. Well, that's where technology can come into play, right? And help us out and say, hey, I'm open. Hey, I'm unlocked. Hey, I'm propped open. Come do something about me, right? And so that can be as simple as, tying the video clip of, somebody going out an authorized door and the door position switch being tied into that. Local speakers that make that kind of an announcement, or some door hardware alarming. But we know that trespassers to our campuses are coming through unlocked, open, propped, dysfunctional doors. Well, let's address that. Let's fix that. And if we have the ability, budget-wise, to buy the technology to have it self-alert, why wouldn't we do that?
And to expand on that, so to be quite clear, many of us, and including myself, were partners with you in the past, where we developed what we called unified control systems. And that's basically the ability to basically evolve and monitor people, roles, and processes the district to address the district's day-to-day business and an emergencies that the district may face in an all hazard way. So what we call them, what I like to use the term is unified security monitoring platforms, so to say, whether that's through a video management system or an access control system, however you're going to do it in the school district. The important piece is you're unifying, and your technology is going to be able to be built upon and constantly evolve. So if you look at our guidelines under enhanced technology, it's not necessarily what we're talking about here today, something that's emerging. No, it's been done with partners such as yourselves for many years now. The key is getting and helping the school districts as this grows and the momentum builds to realize that we can do advanced protocol integrations in our industry. We can tie our doors and hardware, our video management systems, our mass notification, our human roles and processes, our hall pass solutions, our radio communications. And basically what I would say, we're not taking people out of the equation. We're giving people more tools and the ability to use those tools on their belt better and more efficiently. Because I would challenge, when we look at technology, for example, in the retail section, it's kind of backfired on them, so to say, in the loss prevention category, for example. You know, they thought we could get rid of the people and have AI and electronic article surveillance or whatever at the cash register take over. No, that kind of backfired. What I look at it is like the past toolbox that we have here is a toolbox helping the school districts to go in and get and obtain and deploy these tools in a more efficient manner, and also understanding the importance of each of those components and how important they are to enhancing that holistic ability of the schools to educate the students every day. That's the biggest piece. We're not taking people out of it. We're just making it better for them in these emergencies and day-to-day business.
Yeah, that's really well said, Guy. I mean, because I think a lot of people, you know, automatically think when they think technology is like, oh, we're replacing jobs with technology, but that's not the case at all. In fact, I heard a statistic the other day about how the human attention span is shorter than that of a goldfish. And so we're not good at monitoring multiple things, right? If you're one person, but we are great at making decisions. So how do we equip humans to essentially make better decisions, right? With more timely information and be able to not only respond, but maybe even prevent certain events from happening.
Exactly. That's the key, is prevention. We look at anything that we can do. Because unfortunately in our industry, not saying Motorola or who I work for, is we need to be empowering, giving tools to these end users in these K-12 schools. That's the important endeavor, because what we do, we need to empower, not create fear. And this is what this does. This gives us empowerment for day to day, but if the worst happens, we're empowered to deal with those emergencies. You know, we look at the technology components, so we'll talk about a little bit later. It can be complex, and we need these unified security platforms that you and others have in this industry to provide to us K-12 stakeholders, because that helps us to organize it. It helps us to organize your tools. There's nothing worse, I'd say, as having my kids go to my toolbox at home, for example, and you come home to it and you want a tool, it's all over the place and you're like trying to fix a broken pipe or something. No, you want your tools organized and you want your things working together every day. And that's what unified life safety components are doing. And that's it's going to be it's going to be one of the tiers next year for darn sure. To make sure that that's going forward going to be a tiered deployment in the recommendations.
I think it's important for us to note, right, that the past guidelines is written for school administrators, and at no point in an undergrad or a graduate level does a school administrator get a single course, much less an hour, on security or emergency management best practices. But yet, when they become the principal, they're handed the keys to the city and said, you're in charge of it all. So the guidelines, the technologies are all in place to try to ease the burden on them as much as possible and help educate them to say, hey, this is why you need to work and worry about this issue and component. And hey, let me show you some technologies that can help take this burden off of you. Because at the end of the day, K-12's core business is not safety and security. Their core business is educating students. And
Yeah.
we've got to stay with that core. And we've just got to help try to ease the burden as much as we can on safety and security. It's their burden to carry, but we have to help them as much as we can, because I need my kids to learn math and science and English and Spanish, I guess, too. But
Or French, or.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, yeah.
So
I
Kevin,
think Kevin, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
Well,
Guy.
I would just set that when we talk about these platforms, is that ability every day to have these things running in the background. It's not in your face. You know what I mean? Where it's creating that fear factor, I think, of kids, like I've got to worry, look over my shoulder all day. No,
Yeah.
we're empowering them not to be looking over their shoulder all day. It's like concentrate on learning. That's what the business of education is. It's education. It's
Yes.
not about how much we're going to spend. Well, maybe some people could say that if you're a taxpayer. However, what it is we're here to empower the students and those teachers. That's what we're here. It keeps society running.
No, it's great, guys. And now, before we open it up for Q&A, I'm thinking probably one of the questions that are on our audience's mind at this point is, okay, great. It's fantastic to know that there's these guidelines out there. As soon as I'm done with this webinar, I'm going to go download it and start reading up on that and looking at these guidelines. Makes a lot of sense what we're trying to do here, but where do I start and how do I think about how I plan for these kinds of investments? Like, how do you actually bring this to life as opposed to just thinking about it as, a practice or best practices? So what are your thoughts on that, Guy and Kevin?
Well, I look at that, the foundation is, like we talked about a couple times here, is that interoperability between, and I use that word, it used to be interoperability was applied to the radio sections, for example, but the interoperability between the silos of safety, of security and the business functions in your school district, learning, IT, mental health, security and emergency preparedness, and then there's security, and then there's the whole operation side. There's all these different silos. But if I was to go back in time and look, it's about removing those silos and having an interoperability as much as possible between all of them, listening and learning and implementing these good life safety practices and processes into our school district is most important. And I would always say that, you can't do those things without having a good foundation, architectural. You can't do that without having good communications, and you can't do that without having good access control. And one of the burdens I would say that when we were talking about unified life safety systems, schools are struggling across this country right now. How do I keep my classroom doors or my exterior perimeter doors locked all day long and things? Those are questions that are happening in every school in this nation. And the process is looking at a unified approach, having good doors and hardware, having a good video access control system to help monitor that, a good VMS, and communications to facilitate those types of monitoring things. That having those tools on your tool belt is most important. And that's what the Partner Alliance for Safer Schools does and tries to do with our recommendations on our white papers. So if I had it to go back, I wish we had that. Like Kevin said, we didn't have these things. But I would say to you, and I'm proud to say that, is manufacturers and solution providers like yourself helped us over the time to go through these trying periods of new technology and implementation. So to the younger folks, I'm not with my cane here or anything, but I'm just saying, develop partnerships with as many of those silos in your district, but partnerships with your manufacturers, your integrators, and your other community stakeholders. Just develop them. That's the key, is bring interoperability to it. And interoperability used to be just radios. Now it's interoperability in life safety components.
I would say after you download the guidelines, start on page 1, and when you get to page 88, you should have a pretty good idea where you need to go. We even have, there's a great little bubble chart in there too that says who are your stakeholders, and it shows you all the different segments and people that you need to get input from, right? Because assuming you don't walk in and somebody hands you $5 million, assuming you've got to justify that, you've got to follow the past guidelines or something similar to be able to assess your system. So I know we keep talking about the guidelines, but there's a checklist that goes with the guidelines. So you as a school administrator, an assistant principal, whomever, can go and walk your building and make all these checks to see if you're at a tier 1, a basic level throughout the entire guidelines, right? And you're going to find that some areas are tier 1, some areas are tier 0, some areas are tier 4. But that tells you where your gaps are, your red areas, right? Your things that you need to get funding for. Then you can work with other stakeholders to say, okay, is this $1 million project or a $20 million project? I have no idea. And they can help you put the budgets together around those certain areas to make sure you follow those minimum tier 1 guidelines. You take all that data and you package it up to your school board or to a bond referendum committee or capital program or grant, whatever, and say, hey, this is my need based off of this, right? Because when I walked into my first district and was told, hey, I need you to review all 85 school security or school emergency management plans, I was like, okay. I read them all. Most of them forgot to take out the name of the school that they stole it from. And then I had to say, all right, well, where do I begin, right? And lucky for me, unlike Guy, I actually had the internet when I started, and I was able to find some districts out there, and I read through them. I was like, this is a good practice. This is a good practice, and was able to consolidate everything to create a district standard around emergency management. But anyhow, I know I went on, and Guy, I'm sorry I jabbed you.
No, that is okay. But the importance, I would say, you're totally correct about that, Kevin. We did not have the internet back when I started, and that's not a joke. But the key is we now are in a tool age for our folks that are doing the work that we did now, okay, and they're empowered. And, I would say that their challenges are probably even a lot more significant than what we saw in our younger days, by the types of what is happening in society and mental health and, media and those types of things. So where I'm going with this is take these tools, use them, but you young folks out there, again, I sound like an old guy here or whatever. I got my stone car outside. I'll pedal it with my bare feet. But the key is what the key is we welcome them to participate in the Partner Alliance for Safer Schools to give us fresh knowledge and ideas. Everybody on there, we have younger people than us on this panel. We in our discussions, they're very brilliant, what we were hearing from them. And where I'm going with this is it's just prepare for the future. Build now and build for the future is what we need to do. It's all about what we're here for is educating the students. That's what our industry is, and keeping them in a safe place where they can do it. Because let's face it, when I was a kid, it was a lot more innocent. Yeah, sure, we had our challenges, but kids nowadays, they have so many different things coming at them, and anything that we can do to protect that learning environment and give them that freedom for learning any day and not in fear, that's what we should be doing. And that's, I'm honored to say this. I'm not working for Motorola or endorsed anyway, but you guys have saved your technology and the basics has saved my life in the past. I can honestly say that with radio communications. It saved people's lives in active threat situations that I've been involved in. All I can say is look at the basics, everybody. Get the basics in place going forward. That's what we need to do. And that's what PASS's focus was this year, was get back to the basics and build from there, as Kevin was saying.
Yeah, Kevin and Guy, I mean, and Guy, thank you for that. And just to your point there too, a lot of the technology that we innovate and create here at Motorola Solutions, it really is based on partnerships, right? Partnerships like this with PASS, with end users, with people who are in the field, And so it's really important for us to have those relationships as well, so that we can actually build, technology specifically for end users to meet their very specific needs. And I know Guy and Kevin, we were joking when we were prepping for this that we could talk all day on this topic. You kind of got the, a group of like-minded people in this room. But certainly I'd like to at least open it up here for Q&A. So Carol, will send it back over to you. But Guy and Kevin, again, thank you so much for being on this panel with us and sharing your insights.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And one of the questions, an easy one, is where can I find the guidelines? So I just put on the screen here in that top section, the Partner Alliance for Safer Schools. So you'll want to go to www.passk12.org, and then they'll be on the right-hand side there to download those guidelines. So everybody, please go and do that and take a look at the 88-page document yourself. It is very comprehensive.
Disclaimer, they will ask you for your email address. It is not to send you spam, and none of us are going to send you advertisings. It's literally white papers get posted, and you'll get notified of the white papers. And as different versions come out, you'll be notified of that as well.
And we do not give out that information. It's just resides in PASS. It's not going to be sold to vendors or provided to vendors or any potential vendors. It's only at the PASS website. And it's, again, we're a 501(c), and we have to be very, very careful about that, or we could lose our status as a nonprofit.
All right, another question that came in, also I think applicable to this slide as well, is what can small schools do with very limited budgets? So I think one of the answers is that Motorola Solutions does sponsor a grant assistance program through educationgrantshelp.com. So feel free to go in there, take a look at what grants are available at the federal level, at your state level. There's a variety of different options there. You can also, we'll reach out to you with additional information about different grants that are available to help, stretch your budget. Next question. So we were talking a little bit about emergency response apps and panic alerting apps. What's the best one that you've had experience with?
Well, we have to be agnostic here. So I would say to anybody that's looking at purchasing we're talking about address system here, or panic buttons and those things.
Yeah, emergency response apps, panic buttons, mobile, yeah.
So looking at like address system and those things, a supervised network that is able to be unified with other or supervised devices that are able to be unified with other life safety components. When we look at address, for example, address system or emergency response system and the branding and things, I would say that's very important, is to see, has it been utilized in another school district and deployed routinely? But the key when you're looking at that, we talked about this, is that unification, is that ability with it to work with other life safety components within your district. Work, sending an alert over a radio, for example, regardless of who you're using as your radio service provider. Setting the ability to lock your doors. Okay, those are important things. Sound your mass notification system on there. Also the day-to-day, not go off for no reason, but guarantee it's going to work when you need it. And that's a problem that you have to think about in a school district when you have apps or other, and I'm not slamming apps. Where I'm going with this is you have to make sure when somebody calls for help that they're going to get that help. But also too, when you deploy these types of solutions, to make sure that they are multi-hazard, for example, not just for an active threat situation, which is 1 out of 35 million chance of happening in your facility. But let's say being old like Kevin says I do, I have a heart attack. I'm going to need somebody to get help out there and give me have the ability to get help for me, but also too, to have that ability for somebody to give me first aid and CPR, hopefully, if they want me to live. That's the key. It's all about how much we can empower the technology to be tools, and how empower those life safety process components that are being used in the school. So when you're looking at those technologies, just can be cognitive of that. I want to get the biggest bang for my buck. I'm going to look at the multi-hazards I can address on any day-to-day, but also too, that simplicity in deployment and understanding is so important. So it's like I said, in my role, it's like you look at access control and communications. Those are foundational measures, you should address it first, right away. Before you start going to the bigger things, get all your basics in order and then build on it. And you'll be able to sustain that in the long term in your school district more than just buying things out of thin air and hoping they'll last and sustain. No, look for the basics first and build from there.
I think when you're looking at the different apps and communications on that, you first have to ask why. Why am I buying this, right? And the why is usually around emergency communications. Well, if it's emergency communications related, then it needs to follow emergency communication standards, right? It needs to have a trouble. It needs to have a supervisory. It needs to alert you when it has a low battery, et cetera, right? And who's your audience? How are we gonna function with it? If I'm a female school teacher, do I keep my cell phone with me all day, every day? No. Well, then you probably don't want a phone app, right? So you just have to know that why am I buying this and who is my audience?
Yeah, Carol, I'd like to just add one angle to that as well. As clearly, as it relates to panic alert, this is a issue that's very important as it relates to school safety because there's actual legislation around it, right? So Alyssa's law has been very much adopted by many states where it requires a panic alert solution at the school tied into a command center. And certainly with our, tie into public safety from what we provide as Motorola Solutions, we have a number of third-party panic alerts that are already integrated into our command center software. So that's one piece of it because we recognize the importance of giving schools the opportunity to choose what's best for them, but being able to tie into the public safety command center. But I would say the other side of it is one of the big reasons why we recently acquired Rave Mobile Safety as well, is very much not only for the panic alert solution that they bring to the table, but also the tie into mass notification and into the public safety dispatch centers. And so having Rave join the Motorola family has certainly also helped us round out our portfolio to make sure we address that very specific need.
If I could continue that ability for your systems to be advanced protocol integrated to all these solutions is where it is. We can't tell a school district that you got to buy this, you got to buy that. But if we give them the ability, a roadmap is what, that's why I love unified life safety systems. I call them that way. That's why I put it in that enhanced technology part of Beyond the Past. That's so important, is that ability for our technology, our access control, our communications, our VMS, all of those things to work together. That's what, as a K through 12 stakeholder, when you're going out there, look for these systems that are open architecture, and their manufacturers, they're going to work together with others. It's not like trying to be world domination and trying to take over the whole industry. Where I'm going with this is you're going to have we call it Legos. Some of my friends in past, it's like Legos. We're going to have a set. You might buy a car. Your mom buys you a car. We didn't have Legos when I was a kid, Kevin, I know, but we had rocks.
Lincoln Log.
Yeah,
we had, however, Lego, you look at it, it's like a K through 12. It's like they're going to have so many different types of solutions in there. It's looking for solutions are going to help them to work all together, because we all have different budgets, we all have different monetary, we all have different architecture, and we also have different climates and cultures and expectations. So the key is finding that pieces that are going to make your Legos work. It's going to start out, you bought it as a car, in the box, but it's going to turn into something else, like what you do with Legos. It's you're going to build and sustain it.
Great. All right, I think we have time for one more question here. If you could focus on only one layer to protect, where would you start?
Want to go, and I'll go last, Kevin?
That's a dadgummit, Carol. I'm not sure who came up with that question, but that's a tough one. Because it's near impossible to say one layer, I think. If I had one layer, we're talking district-wide parking lot perimeter, I'm going to go classroom layer, I guess, if I only have one layer I can protect, because the classroom layer, that's my last layer of defense, right? It's they've gone through the district, they've gone through the property perimeter, and then now they're at the classroom. Also, too, at the end of the day, the classroom is where the action happens. We're in education. That classroom environment has to be safe and secure. So, we're meeting Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the kids are feeling safe to where they can actually learn their algebra and all the things inside of that protected space. That the teacher feels empowered to make the decisions that are necessary during an emergency, that they're not afraid, right? So I think the classroom layer is our perimeter, I guess, is going to be the one that I would have to go with. If we're kind of looking at the components, though, I'll tell you that I'm definitely on people in training, policies, people in training. Everybody has people. We just need to make sure that they know how to recognize and respond to emergency situations as needed.
And I would have to say it starts from that, if I was to go back, it would be that exterior into the classroom layer, but that ability to create a harmonious work environment or learning environment is absolutely key on any given day. So basically, like looking at from that, not forgetting those other layers, but let's say if I had to, we look at these active threat situations that have happened. They're going in through the side doors, they're going in through, the things that are unmonitored. And that's the key I would be focusing on, is getting the tools and that ability to enhance that learning environment with, good doors hardware, good communication, a good video management system, but not forgetting that human roles and processes. Because again, as we said it before, this is about giving those humans the ability to not be looking over their shoulder all day, but also the ability for them to run the business of education as these tools. That's what they should be doing every day. So when I look at that, again, I wasn't trying to give you guys free airtime. Anybody that knows me or something like that they know that I've seen these things save people's lives. Okay. All right. They know it. They've seen it. The key I would say to everybody is just get those basics and look at that, creating a harmonious learning environment. Because all I can tell you is if you don't do it and you go too far with your security, you're gonna impact that ability. It's going to have a negative impact. So the key is, I just look at that classroom layer, as Kevin stated. Give them the tools in there. Give the teachers the communication devices. Give the right kind of door and hardware. Give the right kind of video management system, but also too the emergency preparedness. A lot of what we see in our K through 12 now is we forget our K through 12 kids. And what I mean by that is empower them with training and processes too that they understand, and not forget that, and give them those tools that we take, to use every day, and not give them to use directly, but knowledge of them, but also human roles and process and emergency preparedness. That's what we're going to win. We're going to be creating, my great grandchildren to be the replacements for me and Kevin, and things like that down the road. But where I'm going with this is, let's empower people, empower them with this great technology and human roles and processes.
Great, wonderful. All right, well, I think that's it for today. Thank you so much, Sharon, Kevin, and Guy for a wonderful conversation today, and for giving us a lot to think about. Any closing thoughts, Sharon, from you?
No, just as we are in School Safety Week, just, again, thank you so much for making the time to be with us. There's lots of resources out there, as Carol was able to show us just a few minutes ago. And certainly, if anyone has any questions, we're a few people who can help answer those questions. So feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any thoughts or comments after this webinar.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right,
Sean.
thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.